Assalamu alaikum. Students, our topic is rectangular, spherical, polar, and cylindrical polar coordinates. Rectangular coordinates, you are familiar with rectangular coordinates. Here is the diagram. This line is x-axis, it is y-axis, and it is z-axis. These all are mutually perpendicular lines. That is, angle between x-axis and y-axis is of 90 degrees. Y-axis and z-axis is of 90 degrees, and z-axis and x-axis is also 90 degrees. And it is ordered as, that is, we have to take anti-clockwise. We will take here x, then it will be y, and it will be z. If we take here y, it will be z, and there will be x. To find coordinates of a point P in space, that is three-dimensional space, we draw perpendiculars from point P to x-axis, and then y-axis, and then z-axis. When we draw perpendicular from P to x-axis, here is this coordinate, x coordinate, it is x. If this length is x, then its first coordinate is x, and if we draw perpendicular from P to y-axis, then this length or this length, it is y. And similarly, when we draw perpendicular on z-axis, then this length is z. So P has rectangular coordinates x, y, and z. Now we see spherical polar coordinates. For this, we take a point O. We say it is pole. OX is initial line. Here ON is projection of OP on polar plane. This angle is theta and this angle is phi. Then P has spherical polar coordinates rho, theta, and phi, where rho is length of the line OP. Theta is the angle between OX and projection of OP, and phi is the angle between OZ and OP. So spherical polar coordinates are rho, theta, and phi. Now these are cylindrical polar coordinates of point P. Here this angle is theta, this length ON is R, and this length is Z. So this length is Z, and cylindrical polar coordinates are theta and Z. Again, we read this topic from notes. In notes, we have spherical polar coordinates Take a point O in a plane. Here is the point O in a plane. O is called pole in the plane and the plane is called polar plane. OX be a line in the polar plane, then OX is called initial line. So this line OX is called initial line. Let OZ be a perpendicular to the polar plane. So OZ is perpendicular to the polar plane. Then OZ is called the polar axis. Let P be any point in space. P be any point in space. Let ON be the projection of ON be projection of OP on the polar plane. Draw PN perpendicular from P to the polar plane. Perpendicular is drawn from P to the polar plane. It is PN and ON is the projection of OP on polar plane. OP magnitude, that is OP magnitude is equal to rho. Angle XON is theta, XON is theta, and angle ZOP is equal to phi. So ZOP is equal to phi. Then rho, theta and phi are called spherical polar coordinates of the point P. Now here is about cylindrical polar coordinates. For this, take a point O in a plane. Here is point O in a plane in space. O is called pole and the plane is called polar plane. Let OX be a line in the polar plane, then OX is called initial line. Let OZ be a perpendicular to the polar plane, then OZ is called polar axis. Let P be any point in space. Draw PN perpendicular from P to the polar plane. That is, draw perpendicular from P on polar plane. Let ON is equal to R, that is here ON is equal to R, and NP magnitude is equal to Z. NP magnitude is Z. Angle XON is equal to theta. Here is the angle XON. This is the angle XON, which is theta. Then R, theta and Z are called cylindrical polar coordinates of the point P. Now here is the relation between Cartesian coordinates and spherical polar coordinates. X is equal to rho sin phi cos theta, y is equal to rho sin phi sin theta, z is equal to rho cos of phi. So from this relation, if you know spherical polar coordinates, that is rho, phi and theta, then you can find out rectangular coordinates, that is x, y and z, by this relation. Here is the relation between cylindrical polar coordinates and Cartesian coordinates, that is x is equal to r cos theta, y is equal to r sin of theta and z is equal to z. From these relations we can solve some questions. Also here you have to learn it by heart, that is rho is equal to x square plus y square plus z square under root theta is tan inverse of y by x, phi is equal to cos inverse z by rho. This relation is helpful if you know rectangular coordinates, then by this relation you can find spherical polar coordinates. In next lecture we will solve some questions related to this topic. So Allah Hafiz.